Hi, loves. So, reaching out to you from my sabbatical over the summer, and I wanted to spend a little time with a teaching from her mystery school that is one of, I think, the deepest recoveries and one of my favorites. So, the teaching, the practice is befriend your weariness. And it goes a little further to say, befriend your weariness and let her lead you to the deep well. It's relevant right now. It's always been relevant, but it's relevant right now, especially because there's so much, we're all being asked for a lot in a lot of ways. And what I think happens for a lot of people is that they run into their weariness, right? And weariness, what is it? It's just like, "Ugh, I've got nothing," or "I'm so tired," or, often weariness even has the voice of like, "I don't even want to do this, life, whatever." It's there's a resignation in it. There is a fallow quality to it. And so what I'd like to do with you today is just return weariness to her right place in the cycle of things, and to direct you a little bit to what I think, well, what I know has been extremely powerful for me, is an actual friendship and alliance with weariness, rather than a fear, a resistance, or a concern around weariness. Right, so befriend your weariness. What does that mean, first of all? To befriend your weariness means to embrace weariness as she is. Our friends, we love as they are, right? We meet them as they are. We uphold them as they are, right? So to befriend weariness is to really stop asking her to be something she's not. Weariness in you. When weariness is moving through, when that's what's true, know that it's the nature of weariness to have absolutely no answers, to have absolutely no energy often, right? Don't ask weariness, don't ask yourself when weariness is true for you to have answers, to even necessarily have an opinion, right? The nature of weariness is it's a fallowness, right? On the cycle of fruition to fallow, weariness is that falling in, that draw in, actually, to the fallow, meaning there's nothing to give, nothing to say, right? There's an interiority to it. There's an incubation to it, right? I wrote down some other words. It's heavy, it's quiet, right? So one of the things we work with, her mystery school it's been woven. It's a deep feminine tradition, woven and informed by many things over my past 2 decades. But one of the strongest influences is Taoist. Taoist approach, Taoist sexuality especially, right? So if you look from a depth Taoist perspective at yin and yang, and this is just a little blurb, but the yin field, which is what underlies everything, is heavier. It's dark, it's wetter, it's denser, it's thicker, right? And when you're called to weariness, actually what you're being called to is the yin field, right? And when you understand that it has a place, just fruition, fallow, yang, yin, right? There is a full cycle. When you allow the fullness of the cycles to happen, you can start to maybe meet weariness with even, certainly an acceptance, but possibly even an invitation, a welcome. Because what weariness is herself an invitation to restore in the yin field, right? The yin field is the field of potential. It's the energy. To me, it's a deep feminine presence, an upwelling, right? That is the place from which all action, all beauty, all right action, all right speech, all right relationship comes. It's that my teacher Sarah calls it this volcanic, substantial power, like power that doesn't need to do anything. It just is, right? So when weariness comes, she's actually an invitation for you to return to the yin field and restore yourself. fill the deeper reservoirs in your being, right? If you allow that to happen, if you don't resist weariness with more coffee, more worry, more trying to fix it, and you do this brave thing, and it is brave, especially in our culture and in our times, brave to say, like, I don't know, I'm going to let myself not see, not know, not think, and just enter the darkness. Just let my energy come into dormancy, right? Come into quiescence and restore in that place, because the truth is that restoration only happens in that place, right? Especially in the deeper places in our being, in these deeper reservoirs of energy, in the deeper resources that we draw on in order to meet our lives. So weariness is a call to the yin field, and it's not, I think we often look at weariness as if it's a defeat. Like, oh, I'm so tired, I'm so defeated, life has defeated me. I don't have anything left to give, to show, but when you understand that to return to the yin field is to actually return to power, that there is, that to retreat or to shelter or incubate in the yin field is not a defeat. It's not an acknowledgement that you just don't have what it takes, or it is an acknowledgement that you run out of energy, but it's not some acknowledgement that you've failed or that you don't have what you need or that you're weak or that you're broken. What it is an acknowledgement simply that it's time to restore to the source of power. It's time to return and to gather power. So in her mystery school, we do a lot of forging alliance with a lot of the things that have been vilified or misunderstood. The invisible, the yin, the dark, the unknown, the mystery, the unspoken influence, magnetism, right? All of these things that I consider part of deep feminine tradition and part of deep feminine power, and the miracle of deep feminine, right? When we return to the yin field, what we're doing is basically, when we reclaim it as an act of power rather than an act of defeat, we've made a huge reclamation, and I invite that for you. Expect to be weary, and all that it means is that you're in the cycle of things, the natural cycle of things, right? Expect to be weary, and when your weariness comes, and I know, believe me, I know how difficult it is to surrender to weariness. It's scary. You don't know if you'll ever come out of it. It's scary because there's so much pressure on you to hold so much, to figure so much out, to show up for so much. There are so many reasons that are valid and understandable why we resist what weariness is calling us toward. But I want to tell you, to speak from my own experience of having had to face incredible weariness and deep sense of a broken spirit, a broken heart, that even sometimes when it takes months or when it seems like it will never end, weariness does have an alliance for us. It is okay to befriend her. And she has her place in natural law, right? What's important to understand, and the only way to really trust it is to experience it over and over again, is that weariness, when you surrender to weariness, right? What's true is that the yang movement, life always rises up out of the fallow. The fruition always returns. It doesn't happen in the way of control that many of us are used to, right? We have to surrender into weariness. And when you're surrendering into weariness, often there is a sense of like, there's no energy left. I have nothing. How will, there's an understandable moment of, or many moments of, I may never have energy again. I can't face any of this, So I want to salute your bravery and invite you into befriending your weariness, letting her lead you where she's trying to lead you. Don't fight her. Don't have another cup of coffee. Don't push it. Don't try to show up for the thing. see what happens when you just say, I'm weary, I'm gonna let her take me for a minute. And you'll often find that it'll be like 20 minutes. And if you give yourself over to the weariness completely, you stop fighting and you actually restore, new life comes. And I wrote down like 3 aspects of that teaching. So that's a teaching we begin with in the core curriculum that we expand into more deeply. Befriend Your Weariness is actually from Queen's Command, which is the 2nd year of her mystery school. So there's a lot there in the school, but there are 3 aspects, I think, that are accessible right away and can help to shift your relationship to your weariness. Weariness is an ally if under 3 conditions, right? If you actually follow her to the deep well. So the teaching is befriend your weariness, follow her to the deep well. So one thing to know is that when you're surrendering to weariness, when you're letting that take you for a moment, your compass, your internal compass, is towards the deep well, right? You're not surrendering into chaos. You're not surrendering into a free fall. You're not surrendering into, you're laying there letting your mind think of all these things, trying to still work it out, right? You're letting her lead you to the deep well. That means you let your mind to be as exhausted and as overthought out as she is. And you let her just be done. You let your heart be tired and lack courage for a minute, right? Feel that need to fortify. And you follow weariness to a deeper well. It's hard to explain, there are practices for it, but it's like there's a nectar, there's a substance. When we talk about the yin field, when we talk about the deep feminine resource that's available, it has a substance to it, right? And to let your weariness take you to that. And that can be a feeling in your body, that can be a practice, it can be on the level of subtle energetics, but it's also really practical. Like, it's nourishing. The deep well nourishes you, right? Gives to you, fills you, comforts you, fortifies you. So what is that? Is it that you rest in bed and wrap up really tight? Is it that you get some soup, take the time and eat, give your body some nourishment, that you connect with a friend that you have a depth of connection with, who can really hear you, who's really going to be able to meet you in the heart, right? See you, uphold you, remind you of who you really are, right? There's when you follow your weariness to the deep well, you're following her to nourishment, because weariness says, I've got nothing. I'm exhausted. I can't. I have nothing. And so if you follow that, there's a natural intelligence in that will then go towards what she needs in order to rise back up, right? And that's nourishment, deep nourishment, right? We're not talking about distraction. We're not talking about all the things that we often do with weariness. I'm so tired, I'm just going to check out to this, or I'm so tired, I'm just going to eat some junk food, whatever. This is about nourishment. So weariness is an ally if you follow her to the deep well, meaning follow her to nourishment. And trust that nourishment then will give rise to new life for you, new energy, new perspectives, right? Weariness is an ally if you let the dead be dead. That is something that's biblical. That's from Jesus. And he said, let the dead bury the dead. And that has come up in so many ways for me over the past few months. In the context of this, what that means is a lot of times weariness comes up in us because there's something in us actually ready to die. It's weary because it's done. It's not the same thing as I'm headed towards my vision and I'm inspired, but I got really tired. I'm weary on the path of my destiny. There's an aspect to weariness that can be I am weary because the programs I'm running, the way that I'm doing my life, the relationships I'm sustaining, whatever it is, like, it's dead. It does not serve me or life anymore. And your life energy, your vitality will stop being able to support the things that are actually already dead. We have to be willing to let the dead be dead. I was just talking to my brother about this. We were talking about many moments in our own lives when it's just been like, wow, I think I'm done. Like, I don't know, I could go. I'm pretty done with this life, like that, this kind of like, not suicidal ideation, not that, but just that deep feeling of like, yeah, I think I'm done. I'm done. And there's a deep weariness in that, right? Like, and as we were talking, what I've come to understand about those moments now is not that they're defining my psychological terrain, but it's a moment where I recognize now that there's something in me that's ready to die, actually. I don't want to die, We over-identify with these things, but it's like when you have that deep weariness, it's like, oh, what is it inside me that is actually ready to die? And will I lay it to rest? That's part of following weariness, right? There are some things that are weary, not just because they need to be restored, but that are weary because they're ready to go back into the ground, Ways that you've been relating, conditions inside of you, right? Choices you've been making, stress you've been willing to accommodate for far too long, right? We will be brought by weariness to face also not just the need to restore, but to face also things in our lives that are actually ready to die. And that can be liberating, right? When we follow weariness and we say, all right, I'm not going to keep asking you to find it, to come up with the energy out of nowhere, to keep living into this thing. Tell me, what are you weary of? What am I weary of? And if you listen, sometimes you'll get really profound insight into what's actually alive in you, what's emergent, what's going to carry you forward versus what it's time to lay down and let be. So befriending your weariness can look like understanding that it's time to lay some things to rest. And listening to your weariness, not as something to be resisted or feared, but as an inner wisdom that says in the voice of, I'm tired. I can't do this way. That in that voice is letting you know that you are transforming and that there is a shedding. It's time to shed a skin that you've been in and step into a new one. The third piece I had about really making weariness an ally is consciously cultivating the ability to actually rest. So weariness is calling you into rest. She's saying, like, I need to rest. I don't have anything to give anymore. And the thing is, we often push ourselves through weariness to keep doing, and we actually, because sometimes we're not able to. That is what it is. But a lot of times we're more able to than what we think. To take 10 minutes even, to take 20 minutes, to take a night and sleep on it, whatever, to take a day, a week if we can, whatever, but to follow the weariness. We often have more ability to do that than what our false urgencies and the stress of life will make us think we do. And that's just its own thing. But when we're turning towards weariness, what she needs from you is real rest, restoration, right? And most of us, like, especially over the past 3 years, I've had to actually learn how to rest, learn how to sleep, learn how to befriend darkness, to befriend sleep, to trust that I can rest, and that from that rest I'll have what I actually need. So what did I have down there? Yeah, you have to actually be able to rest, and then in that to be able to absorb this substance, right? I'm talking about like a deep feminine substance of like the literal substance of the infield is another way to say it, but that when weariness is calling you, you're wanting to like fill in with presence, with energy, with wisdom, with your inner resources. In the newsletter, I'll go ahead and include a link. Actually, there's a woman who's she leads these gorgeous yoga nidra meditations, which is the yoga of sleep, and they've been huge for me actually to help me consciously move into sleep, consciously move into restoration. Um, I I even forget her name. It's Jennifer, I think. I'm going to put it in the newsletter, and I'll try to put it in the link with the YouTube channels. But it's things like that. Seek out. You know, a lot of my guided meditations, for instance, just put people to sleep. They don't even end up doing the meditation. They don't necessarily do the practice until the end. You know, it's important to know things like that. Like, what is it, for whatever reason, that puts you into this state where you're actually at rest, meaning your being is absorbing, is restoring, has released its grip for a moment. Because while we're gripping and when we're not returning to the actual state of rest, then we're not actually resting. And weariness, you know, wants to rest and then rise. Rest and then rise, right? This is a cycle. So those are my thoughts. And my invitation to you is befriend your weariness. Let her lead you to the deep well, to nourishment, right? Listen if she's telling you that it's time to lay something to rest, right? Trust her. She's a part of you. She's a part of natural law. And follow the invitation there to actually consciously learn how to rest, right? And however that happens, I'll put this yoga nidra session in. If it's that something puts you to sleep, right? But it's not, in order to rest, there has to be this release from overstimulation. Your eyes must rest in darkness, right? No more stimulation. Your ears, not listening to any more arguments, thoughts, you know, your mind quieting, right? We all know that these are not easy things necessarily, but to just even in this moment, acknowledge it as a sacred need, the sacred need to restore in a place of power. And if it's guided meditations, if it's yoga nidra, whatever it is, to give it its right place, its proper place of cultivation and restoration in your life, right? Weariness as a guide towards a deeper place is also how we make sure that our actions, the movement, the words that we choose, that we move with from the fallow, from our rest, are in alignment, right? It's not just, I'll close with this final teaching from my teacher Sarah, that weariness, the fallow, this quietude, the quiescence, and what happens when we go in and we restore, doesn't just exist in order so that other things can happen out of it. It's true. Life is born out of that place. But it has a power and an import in its own right, right? This is a volcanic presence. Weariness will lead you to a depth of your own being, a substance, right? A volcanic power that rises up from hidden places, right? And then does inform with the good, with natural law, with integrity, how you speak, what you do, what you choose, and the influence that you then have on the world. So, befriend your weariness. Follow her to the deep well. Blessed be.